The first thing I noticed wasn't the music. It wasn't the laughter or the clinking of glasses or the soft glow of Christmas lights wrapped around the banister. It was the pen, silver, heavy, lying on the table in front of me like a quiet threat. I remember thinking how strange it was, how something so small could feel heavier than my entire life. "Go ahead," Mark said softly. His voice was calm, too calm, like this was just another item on his holiday checklist. The room was full. Friends, family, people I'd hugged moments ago, people who had no idea that in exactly 30 seconds my marriage would officially end. At a Christmas party. My hands were shaking. I tried to stop them, curling my fingers into my palm, but the trembling traveled up my arms and settled in my chest. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. I looked up at the Christmas tree. We bought it together, 3 years ago, our first one as a married couple. I remembered how Mark lifted me so I could place the star on top. I remembered laughing because it tilted, and he kissed my forehead and said, "Perfect things are boring anyway." Now that same tree stood behind him, glowing warmly, watching as he waited for me to sign away everything we once promised each other. The paper in front of me wasn't just paper. It was 7 years. It was late-night talks. It was inside jokes no one else understood. It was the life I thought I was living, and I was about to end it with witnesses. Before I continue, let me say this. If you've ever loved someone who slowly became a stranger, if you've ever smiled in public while breaking in private, please pause for a moment. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, because stories like this, real, raw, emotional, deserve to be told. And maybe, just maybe, they'll remind you that you're not alone. Now let me tell you how we ended up here. I met Mark on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I was late. He was patient. I spilled coffee on his jacket, mortified beyond words, and he laughed like it was the best thing that had happened to him all day. "Guess that means we're even," he said, holding up his soaked sleeve. I was hoping for an excuse to leave early. That was Mark. Easy, warm, effortless. He loved Christmas more than anyone I knew. Decorated too early, sang too loud, wrapped gifts with military precision. "You don't rush Christmas," he once told me. "You let it soak in." And I did. I soaked in him. We built traditions, matching pajamas, handwritten notes hidden in ornaments, hosting Christmas parties every year so big our apartment barely survived them. This party was supposed to be just another tradition. I wore the red dress he loved, the one he said made me look like home. I didn't know I'd be wearing it to my own emotional execution. The cracks didn't come all at once. They never do. They came in silence, in forgotten conversations, in the way he stopped asking how my day was and started telling me how his was. I noticed first when I stopped being included in his plans. "Work thing," he'd say. "Last minute," he'd say. And I believed him, because loving someone means trusting them. Until it doesn't. The fights weren't loud. They were worse. They were cold. "I feel invisible," I told him once, standing in the kitchen at midnight. He didn't look up from his phone. "You're being dramatic," he said. That word, dramatic, wrapped itself around my heart and squeezed. 3 weeks before Christmas, he asked me to sit down. Never a good sign. He said, "I think we want different things." I laughed. I actually laughed. "We've been married 7 years," I said. "You don't just wake up and realize that." He didn't laugh back. "I did," he said quietly. That night, I cried into a pillow so no one would hear me. I kept telling myself it was just a rough phase, that marriages survived worse. What I didn't know was that he had already decided. "Why the party?" I whispered now, staring at the papers. Mark leaned closer so no one else could hear. "Because it's clean. Everyone's already here. No drama." No drama. I looked around at the twinkling lights. The smiling faces, the glasses raised in celebration. My chest burned. "You planned this," I said. He didn't deny it. My mother caught my eye from across the room. She smiled, holding a plate of cookies, completely unaware that her daughter's life was about to fracture in public. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to rewind time to that rainy Thursday and never spill that coffee. But instead, I picked up the pen. The room blurred as tears filled my eyes. One drop fell on the paper, smudging the ink. Mark sighed. "Please don't make this harder," he whispered. Harder, as if my heart was already breaking in half. I signed my name, one letter at a time, and just like that, I wasn't his wife anymore. The room erupted in laughter at something someone said. Music swelled. Life went on. And I sat there, crying silently at my own Christmas party. The pen slipped from my fingers and hit the table with a soft clink. That sound, that tiny, polite sound, felt louder than anything else in the room. Mark folded the papers neatly, as if he'd just finished paying a bill. He slid them into a manila folder and stood up. "I'll tell people you're not feeling well," he said. "Not we, you." I looked up at him, searching his face for something, regret, guilt, sadness, anything that would tell me the man I loved was still somewhere inside him. There was nothing, just relief. That's when I realized something terrifying. He hadn't just fallen out of love with me, he had already mourned me. I stood up slowly. My legs felt weak, like they might fold under the weight of what had just happened. The room seemed unreal now, too bright, too loud, too alive for the moment I was in. Someone bumped into me, laughing, apologizing without really looking. "Careful," they said cheerfully. I almost laughed. Careful? About what? My marriage was already dead. I slipped into the bathroom and locked the door. The moment the lock clicked, I collapsed against the sink. I didn't sob right away. At first, I just stared at my reflection. Red eyes, shaking lips, a woman dressed for a celebration she was no longer part of. "I signed it," I whispered to the mirror. "I actually signed it." My hands came up to my mouth as the reality crashed down. The sobs came then, deep, broken, animal sounds I didn't recognize as my own. I slid down onto the cold tile floor, hugging my knees like a child. 7 years, 7 Christmases, 7 anniversaries, 7 years reduced to ink on paper. I thought about all the times I defended him to my friends, all the moments I blamed myself when things went wrong. If I was just more patient, if I was less emotional, if I tried harder. I wondered how many nights he had already spent imagining a life without me. A knock on the door, soft, hesitant. "Sweetheart?" My mother's voice. "Are you okay?" My heart shattered all over again. "I'm fine," I said quickly, wiping my face with toilet paper. Just need a minute." There was a pause. Then, "Take your time," she said gently. Her kindness hurt more than anger ever could. When I finally walked back into the party, everything felt wrong. The music was louder now, the room warmer, the laughter sharper. Mark was standing near the fireplace, drink in hand, laughing with his coworkers like nothing monumental had just happened, like he hadn't just ended our marriage between appetizers and dessert. I watched him for a moment. He didn't look back. I grabbed my coat from the bedroom and slipped out quietly. No announcement, no goodbye, just the cold December air hitting my face like a slap. I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel for a long time. My phone buzzed once. A message from Mark. "I'll stay at my brother's tonight. We can talk logistics later." Logistics? As if love could be itemized. I didn't reply. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in our bed, my bed now, apparently, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past year, searching for the exact point where he stopped choosing me. Was it when I got busier at work? When I stopped laughing as easily? When life became routine instead of romantic? At 3:17 a.m., I got out of bed and opened the closet. His side was already half empty. He had planned this longer than I knew. The days after Christmas were worse than the party itself. The silence was unbearable. No good morning texts, no did you eat reminders, no shared jokes about nothing. The house echoed with absence. I started noticing things I'd never noticed before: how quiet mornings were, how heavy evenings felt, how loneliness could sit beside you on the couch and feel physical. Friends called, family checked in. I said the same thing every time: I'm okay. I wasn't. On December 28th, Mark came by to get the rest of his things. I stood in the doorway while he packed, my arms wrapped around me like armor. I didn't want to hurt you, he said suddenly. I laughed, short, bitter. You signed divorce papers at a Christmas party. Let's not pretend this was gentle. He flinched. I thought it would be easier that way. For who? I asked. He didn't answer. As he lifted a box, something slipped out and fell onto the floor. A photo frame. I picked it up before he could. It was from our 3rd anniversary. Me laughing, head thrown back, him kissing my cheek. We looked so happy it hurt to see. I turned the frame over. Written in his handwriting, "Forever starts here." My hands started shaking again. You meant that, I said quietly. He swallowed. I did, at the time. The most dangerous phrase in love. That night, after he left for good, I sat on the floor surrounded by memories. Photos, notes, holiday cards. I cried until my head hurt and my chest ached. And then, something unexpected happened. I got angry. Not explosive anger, cold clarity. I realized something Mark never understood. I didn't lose him. He lost me. He lost the woman who loved deeply, forgave endlessly, believed stubbornly. He lost someone who would have fought for him until the end. And suddenly, that truth hurt, but it also gave me air. On New Year's Eve, I stood alone on my balcony with a glass of champagne. Fireworks exploded across the sky, bright and loud and alive. I raised my glass, tears slipping down my face. To endings, I whispered, and to beginnings I don't understand yet. My phone buzzed. A message from Mark. I hope someday you forgive me. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, I hope someday you understand what you walked away from. I turned off my phone. That was the night I decided something. I wouldn't let my story end with his choice. I didn't know what came next. I didn't know who I would become, but I knew this: I would not stay broken on a memory that no longer loved me back. Spring arrived quietly. No announcement, no permission. One day the air simply felt lighter, and the mornings stopped hurting as much. I noticed it first when I woke up without that familiar ache in my chest, the one that had lived there since Christmas night. It wasn't gone completely, but it no longer ruled me. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It sneaks up on you when you're busy surviving. I moved apartments in March. Smaller place, more light, no memories attached to the walls. The first night there, I slept on the floor with a blanket and a single pillow. No bed yet, no couch, just space and silence. But this time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. I started doing things alone. Coffee dates with myself, long walks with no destination, cooking meals just because I wanted to, not because someone else expected them. I stopped asking why it ended. I started asking who I wanted to become next. One afternoon in May, I ran into Mark, of all places, a bookstore. I was standing in the fiction aisle when I heard my name spoken carefully, like it might shatter if said too loudly. I turned around. There he was. He looked different. Not worse, not better, just unfamiliar. Hey, he said. Hey, I replied, and that was it. No racing heart, no shaking hands, just two people who once knew each other deeply, now standing at a polite distance. We talked. Small talk at first. Work, weather, life. He told me he'd moved again, said he was figuring things out. I smiled politely. I didn't ask questions. That surprised him. "You look good," he said finally. I nodded. "I feel good." And I meant it. We sat down at a nearby cafe. His idea. I agreed, not because I missed him, but because I wasn't afraid anymore. "I owe you an apology," he said after a while, "for how everything ended." I stirred my coffee slowly. "I've already forgiven you," I said. His eyes widened. "You have?" "Yes," I said calmly. "Not for you, for me." Silence stretched between us. He looked uncomfortable now. That used to be my role. "I didn't realize what I was losing," he said quietly. I looked at him. Really looked. The man who once felt like my whole world now felt like a chapter I'd already read. "I know," I said. He frowned. "How can you be so sure?" "Because you're only seeing my worth now that I no longer offer it freely," I thought. But I didn't say that. Instead, I said something truer. I said, "Because if you had known," I said gently, "you wouldn't have chosen to leave." He nodded slowly. "I think about you sometimes," he admitted, "about what we had." I smiled, not sadly, not bitterly. "I hope you remember it kindly," I said. "It mattered, just not forever." That was the moment I saw it. The regret. Not loud, not dramatic. Quiet. Heavy. The kind that shows up too late. When we stood to leave, he hesitated. "Would you ever—" he started. I raised my hand gently. "No," I said softly. "I won't go backward to prove my worth again." He swallowed. "I understand." I wasn't sure he did, but that wasn't my responsibility anymore. That night, I went home and stood by my window, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. I thought about the woman who cried silently at a Christmas party, the woman who signed divorce papers with shaking hands, the woman who thought her life had ended because a man chose differently. And I felt something unexpected. Pride. I didn't rebuild myself to make him miss me. I rebuilt myself because I deserved to exist fully, with or without someone choosing me. Love didn't fail me. I abandoned myself once. I promised I never would again. Months later, I hosted a Christmas party again. Different place, different people. Same season. The tree was smaller, the lights softer. Someone laughed in the kitchen, music played low in the background, and I felt whole. No pen on the table, no papers waiting, just me, standing in my own life. I raised a glass and smiled. To endings that save us, and beginnings brave enough to follow. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it.